April 15, 2019. A quiet spring evening in Portland, Oregon. Just before sunset, a woman's screams sliced through the peaceful streets of the Irvington neighborhood. Moments later, her lifeless body was found on her own porch, stabbed, slashed, and left to die. The victim? A beloved pediatric nurse. The suspect? A former U.S. Marine with a grudge. But this wasn't a random attack. It was calculated, rehearsed, and utterly ruthless. As the investigation unfolded, what police uncovered was a chilling tale of obsession, betrayal, and revenge. This is the story of the murder of Eleanor, Ellie, Hart, and the man who believed she had ruined his life. April 15, 2019. Portland, Oregon, 6:41 p.m. Eleanor Hart, known as Ellie to her friends, was just arriving home from a 12-hour shift at Providence Children's Hospital. Her scrubs were wrinkled, her step a little slow, but her mind was already shifting to dinner with her longtime partner, Jamie Wells. They'd made plans to cook something simple, spaghetti and garlic bread, and watch an old rom-com they both pretended not to like. Ellie was tired, but content. She didn't notice the man across the street, standing just behind the row of rhododendrons in the neighbor's yard. She didn't know he'd been there for hours, waiting, watching. When Ellie reached her front steps, she noticed something odd. The porch light wasn't on. That was strange. It always flicked on at dusk. Part of the smart system Jamie had installed last fall. She stepped forward and reached for the door. That's when he moved. A blur of motion, a sharp exhale, then pain. Jamie would later tell police he heard what sounded like a scream, followed by a wet sound. He ran out the back door barefoot and found Ellie sprawled on the steps, blood pooling around her neck and chest. She was still alive, barely. Her lips moved, trying to form words. Then she was gone. The 911 call came in at 6:43 p.m. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Detective Claire Mendez had just sat down with a sandwich when the call came through her radio. Possible homicide. 1629 Northeast 22nd Avenue. Female victim. Late 40s. Multiple stab wounds. DOA. By the time she arrived, the street was cordoned off and lit with the pulsing red-blue lights of half a dozen police cruisers. The forensics team was already snapping photos. Neighbors were gathered behind the yellow tape, some still in gardening gloves or with dogs on leashes. Faces pale. Ellie Hart was lying face up on her porch, her eyes wide open. The EMTs had tried CPR, but it was clear she'd lost too much blood too fast. Claire crouched beside the body. A paramedic handed her a plastic bag. Found this next to her left hand. Inside was a gold necklace with a shattered clasp. Ellie's. Claire recognized it from the hospital's staff directory photo. Looks like it broke during a struggle. Then something else caught her eye. The power box on the side of the house was open. Cut wires. Deliberate. Son of a bitch planned this. Claire muttered. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Back at the precinct, a profile began to form. Eleanor Hart, age 48, pediatric nurse with over 25 years of service. No criminal record, no enemies on paper. Respected, loved. She and Jamie had lived together for 8 years. No history of domestic issues. This wasn't a break-in. Nothing was stolen. It wasn't sexual. It wasn't random. And then Jamie said something that shifted the whole course of the investigation. She mentioned someone a couple weeks ago. Said there was a guy who made her uncomfortable. Someone she worked with. He'd been let go last year. But apparently he was hanging around town again. Did she give you a name? Jamie hesitated. I think. Ethan Maddox. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Ethan Maddox. 42 years old. Former Marine. He had served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Honorable discharge in 2012. Hired by Providence in 2018 as a logistics technician in the Worked under Ellie's supervision. His contract was not renewed in early 2019. Reason: multiple complaints of inappropriate conduct and unprofessional behavior. Ellie had submitted the final report that led to his termination. Claire's partner, Detective Reed, pulled up his DMV photo. Square jaw, close-cropped hair, green eyes with that vaguely hollow look some veterans never quite lost. They ran his address, an apartment on the east side. But Maddox wasn't home. He'd left a note. Some people have to bleed before the world notices them. Now you'll notice. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The next 72 hours were chaos. The city was on edge. The media swarmed the hospital. Co-workers cried on camera. Ellie's patients left flowers at the foot of her porch steps. Providence released a statement calling her a light in the darkest hours of illness. And Ethan Maddox? He was nowhere, until someone saw him at a bus terminal in Salem, nearly 50 miles south of Portland, buying a one-way ticket to Reno, Nevada. A bolo was issued. The FBI was alerted. Every news outlet in Oregon plastered his face across the evening broadcast. But he slipped through their fingers. Blank. Underscore. Blank. It would take one unexpected witness to crack the case wide open. A former Marine buddy of Maddox's, currently living in Eugene, came forward. He told police that a week before the murder, Maddox had driven down and tried to recruit him to help with a job. He kept talking about how this woman at the hospital had ruined his life. Said she blackballed him, got him fired. He was obsessed. The man had declined, thinking Maddox was just venting. Now he realized he should have called someone. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Back at the crime scene, new evidence emerged. Buried beneath a row of daffodils in the backyard, freshly dug earth. Forensics unearthed a backpack. Inside, rubber gloves, a kitchen knife, a bloodied white t-shirt, and a prepaid burner phone. DNA on the gloves and shirt matched both Maddox and Ellie. It was enough. A federal warrant was issued. Now it was just a matter of time. Blank. Underscore. Blank. 10 days later, Maddox was caught. A routine traffic stop outside Sparks, Nevada. He had dyed his hair, grown a beard, and was living out of his car. A Smith & Wesson hunting knife was found under his seat. He didn't resist arrest, just smiled. "What took you so long?" he asked. The arrest of Ethan Maddox barely made a dent in his demeanor. He sat in the interrogation room at the Portland Police Bureau's downtown office, arms crossed, staring at the one-way mirror like he was looking into a void. The room was small, windowless, lit by a single flickering fluorescent bulb that buzzed like a wasp in a jar. Detective Claire Mendez stood behind the glass, watching silently. "He's too calm," she muttered. "Way too calm for a man who just butchered someone." Her partner, Reed, nodded. "Sociopathic calm. He's been rehearsing this moment. They had to play this right." Blank. Underscore. Blank. Interview 1. April 26, 2019 to 3:10 p.m. Claire entered the room, files in hand, and offered a small nod. "Ethan." He didn't respond. She sat. "You know why you're here." He finally looked at her. His voice was low, gravelly. "You think I killed her?" Claire didn't flinch. "We don't think. We know." He chuckled. "You always this sure about things?" Claire slid a photo across the table. It showed Ellie's porch, soaked in blood. Her name was Eleanor Hart. She saved children's lives. She mentored young nurses. She fed homeless teens out of her own pocket. And you ended her. Ethan tapped the photo gently. "You think I did that? Just like that? That's your theory?" "No. That's the evidence. Your DNA, your prints, the knife, the gloves, the burner phone. You left it all for us. Did you want to be caught?" Silence. Claire leaned in. "Or did you just not care?" Blank. Underscore. Blank. Outside the room, Jamie Wells stood clutching a styrofoam coffee cup that had long gone cold. Her eyes were hollow, but dry. She'd cried enough already. Now it was just numb. She looked at Claire through the window as the detective stepped out after the interview. "Well?" Jamie asked. "He's dancing around it. No confession yet, but he's not denying it either. It's like he wants to be acknowledged." Jamie swallowed. "He killed her because she told the truth." Blank. Underscore. Blank. The media circus exploded overnight. Ex-Marine arrested for nurse slaying. Nightmare in Portland. A soldier turns killer. Love, obsession, and revenge. News vans lined the street outside Ellie and Jamie's home. Local reporters fought for angles. National media picked up the case, especially once details of Ethan's military past came to light. It didn't help that Ethan himself started talking. Blank. Underscore. Blank. April 29, 2019 KTVZ News exclusive. I didn't kill anyone, he told the reporter. I served this country. I helped people. But no one wants to talk about that. They want to pretend I'm some psychopath. I'm not. When asked about his relationship with Eleanor Hart, he shrugged. I worked with her. That's it. She didn't like me. That's fine. A lot of people don't. Then, a chilling statement. But when someone takes everything from you, your job, your visa, your dignity, you start to wonder, who's the real criminal? Blank. Underscore. Blank. Back at the precinct, Claire reviewed Maddox's employment records. Fired February 5, 2019. Complaints of verbal aggression, inappropriate comments to nurses, and insubordination. Final incident involved yelling at a parent of a sick child. Ellie filed the final report, citing him as volatile, combative, and resistant to authority. And then came the kicker. Maddox had filed a complaint against Ellie 2 weeks before his termination, claiming discrimination and professional sabotage. The complaint was dismissed. He'd stewed in resentment for months. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Psychological profile. Constructed by Dr. Amy Ralston, FBI behavioral analyst. Diagnosis: narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial traits. Traits: lacks empathy, hyperfixation on perceived injustices, blames others for personal failures. Risk level: high, with a capacity for organized and violent retaliation when ego is threatened. Claire read the file and closed it. This guy didn't snap, she said to Reed. He planned this, down to the hour. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Then came a discovery that changed everything. While examining call logs from the burner phone found in Maddox's buried backpack, digital forensic specialists found dozens of outgoing calls, most to Ellie's landline. Over 100 in the span of 3 weeks. Some as early as 4 a.m., others just before she left work. He was trying to map her routine. They also recovered text messages sent from the phone to an unknown number. She needs to be gone. I'm not letting her ruin anyone else. April 15th. Final answer. Claire's blood chilled. April 15th. The day of Ellie's murder. Blank. Underscore. Blank. The trial preparation began. The DA's office moved swiftly. Lead prosecutor Jason Underwood, known for his direct courtroom manner and reputation for eviscerating defendants on cross. The premeditation is obvious, he said in the pre-trial briefing. This wasn't heat of the moment. This was weeks of planning. A stalking pattern, a coordinated power cut, a murder weapon chosen for silence and speed. But defense attorney Nina Park had other ideas. She floated a defense based on PTSD and diminished capacity. He's a decorated Marine. 2 tours in Iraq. He's had traumatic brain injuries. Night terrors. He wasn't in control. Blank. Underscore. Blank. April 30th, 2019. Maddox's wife speaks out. Her name was Dana Maddox, a Vietnamese-American woman 10 years younger than Ethan. She came to the station with a lawyer. Hands trembling. Eyes puffy. He told me. The night it happened. She whispered. He came home and he said, "It's over. She's gone. No more judgment, no more reports." I thought he meant he got a new job. But then I saw the blood on his shirt. "Did you report it?" She shook her head. He said if I said anything, he'd do the same to me. She paused. He practiced it. The slitting. He told me what to do if someone bled out. He showed me, on a pillow. Like training. Claire's stomach turned. Blank. Underscore. Blank. May 3rd, 2019 press conference. DA Jason Underwood announced the official charge. First-degree murder with special circumstances, premeditation, lying in wait, and use of a deadly weapon. No plea deal. Underwood told reporters, "We're seeking life without parole." Blank. Underscore. Blank. Meanwhile, Jamie Wells was left to pack up Ellie's things. Each drawer, each picture frame, was a new wound. She found a sticky note in Ellie's wallet. "He's getting worse. If something happens to me, check Ethan." Jamie crumbled to the floor, sobbing. She'd told Ellie to report him again. But Ellie always said, "We don't escalate unless we have to. I can handle him." Blank. Underscore. Blank. But no one could handle what Ethan Maddox had become. He believed the world owed him something. And when it didn't pay up, He took it in blood. The courtroom was packed. Everyone wanted to witness what would unfold when the man accused of brutally murdering Eleanor Hart was finally brought to justice. Reporters leaned forward, pens ready. Ellie's family sat still in the front row, faces etched with grief and anticipation. And then, Ethan Maddox walked in, calm, confident, like none of this touched him. He glanced around the room. Not a flicker of remorse in his eyes. The prosecution wasted no time. They laid it all out. The job loss, the stalking, the purchase of the burner phone, the planned attack, the gloves, the knife, the precision of every move he made. This wasn't some crime of passion. It was a strategy, cold, meticulous, and terrifying. They called it what it was, an execution. And then the defense took the floor. They didn't deny what had happened. No one could. The evidence was too strong. Instead, they tried to shift the frame. They painted Ethan as a broken man, a former soldier with scars on the inside, a man whose mind was fractured by war, by betrayal, by isolation. They called it a psychotic break, a dissociative state. They asked the jury to understand, not to forgive, but to understand. Then came the witnesses. Jamie Wells, Ellie's partner of nearly a decade, took the stand. Her voice trembled, but every word hit like a hammer. She spoke of Ellie's fear, how she jumped at sounds in the middle of the night, how she checked the locks twice, how she'd seen Ethan parked outside their house more than once. The prosecution asked her what Ellie had said the last time she talked about him. Jamie swallowed, then said, "She told me, he's getting worse." Then came Dana Maddox, Ethan's wife. Her hands shook as she told the jury everything. How her husband came home the night of the murder and said, "It's done." How he made her watch him practice the technique, on pillows, fruit, anything he could slash. She said he talked about Ellie like she was a disease, something that needed to be cut out. The defense jumped on her testimony, reminded the jury she had received immunity, a visa extension, housing, protection. Couldn't she be lying to save herself? But it wasn't just Dana. Forensics backed it all up. The surveillance footage, the burner phone, the murder kit found buried behind Ellie's house, DNA, cell tower pings. The prosecution called it a perfect storm of intent and opportunity. And they weren't done. They showed the jury a notebook found in Maddox's car. A list of names. Ellie's was circled. Another name was underlined. Stacy Meyer, a supervisor from a previous job. She was next. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was a pattern, a plan. Then the defense brought in their expert, a psychiatrist who explained Ethan's PTSD, his combat history, the flashbacks, the night terrors, the anxiety. He said Ethan was detached from reality, that the trauma rewired his brain. But the prosecution wasn't buying it. Not for a second. They pointed to the timeline, the days of planning, the purchase of items, the steps taken to hide his tracks. No, this wasn't a man in crisis. This was a man in control. Dangerous, focused, deadly. Then, the twist. The judge called a private recess. Ethan's own lawyer informed the court that her client had threatened her. Told her she'd disappear just like Ellie if she didn't push harder. From that moment on, Maddox appeared in court in restraints. Any sliver of sympathy left in that courtroom vanished. The jury heard every word, saw every frame, and when the prosecution delivered their closing argument, it was simple. Ethan Maddox had every chance to walk away, every chance to ask for help. But instead, he made a choice, a calculated, deliberate choice to end a woman's life, because she told the truth. And the jury listened. 7 hours later, they returned. Guilty. First-degree murder. No possibility of parole. Maddox didn't flinch, didn't blink. He just sat there, stone-faced. His sentence? Life behind bars. No mercy. No second chances. Just justice. Just 1 week after the verdict was read, Ethan Maddox tried to take his own life. He was found in his cell at Snake River Correctional Institution. Wrists and neck slashed with a sharpened piece of metal hidden inside his mattress. Blood everywhere. A note on the floor. No one knows exactly how long he'd been lying there before a guard doing hourly checks spotted the red pooling under the door. They rushed him to the prison infirmary. He survived. And the note? It said one thing. "I did what I had to do. She ruined my life. I took hers." No apology, no regret, just justification. After that, Ethan was moved to a higher security wing and placed on 24-hour suicide watch. But the damage was done, public outrage exploded. Some said he was trying to manipulate the system, dodge true punishment. Others believed it was a last act of cowardice. Either way, he had survived, and the story was far from over. Because someone else had been listening to him for months. Clementine Marsh, an investigative journalist with the Oregon Record, had been exchanging letters and calls with Maddox since shortly after his arrest. She'd been following the case from the start, and Maddox had chosen her. Or, maybe more accurately, he'd targeted her. He told her he had a story to tell, something no one else knew. At first, it was routine. He denied the crime, said the state had it all wrong, claimed Dana lied for immigration perks, said Ellie was part of a toxic feminist machine that punished strong men. The same rehearsed garbage, but then, it shifted. In one phone call, Maddox's tone changed. He said, "You know, Clementine, when people are desperate, they do desperate things." She pressed him. He told her Ellie wasn't the first person he thought about killing. Not by a long shot. He admitted to stalking his ex-wife in California the year before. He even flew out there, watched her house, sat in his rental car outside her son's elementary school, said he was gathering courage, but he couldn't go through with it. Not then. That failure, he claimed, is what pushed him toward Ellie. He needed to succeed at something. And in his mind, revenge was success. Then came the most horrifying part. Maddox told Clementine he had planned to disguise himself as a Mormon missionary. White shirt, tie, bicycle, the whole get-up. He said Ellie would have opened the door if he looked harmless. He wanted to scare her, humiliate her, maybe record it, but once he saw her face, he just couldn't stop. He said it like he was proud. Clementine recorded the call, handed it straight to the police. Between his confession and the suicide note, the story reignited across the country. But it got darker. In a separate interview, Dana Maddox revealed something chilling. She said Ethan had practiced his slit technique on raw chickens he brought home from the grocery store. Over and over, telling her it had to be silent, clean, no mess. He even told her, "If I can do it right the first time, no one will hear a thing." Investigators began looking into other unsolved violent incidents in the Portland area involving female victims and no leads. They didn't find any immediate links, but what they did find was disturbing enough. A second set of clothing purchased from a Salvation Army store. A second burner phone. Receipts for a cheap motel room under a false name just 3 miles from Stacy Meyer's house. Stacy was lucky. She had moved out of state in early March. Never left a forwarding address. Never knew how close she came to being his next target. The prosecution's theory was confirmed. This wasn't a one-time act. This was a man building momentum. He wasn't spiraling. He was ascending. And then, like a bad horror movie, he tried again. Another suicide attempt, this time less dramatic, but more desperate. He swallowed half a bottle of stolen pills smuggled through a guard. He survived that too, barely. Afterward, the prison warden ordered full psychological isolation. No mail, no phone access, no outside communication. It should have ended there, but somehow, it didn't. Because one more person came forward. Her name was Layla Tran, a former nurse who had worked with Maddox briefly before his firing. She said he once cornered her in a hospital stairwell and whispered, "You're lucky Ellie's the one who screwed me. You wouldn't have seen me coming." She never reported it. Said she was afraid no one would believe her. But after Ellie's death, she couldn't stay silent. With her testimony and Clementine's recordings, the full scope of Maddox's pathology came into view. He wasn't just angry. He was methodical. He was watching. And if things had gone just a little differently, there might have been more blood on the steps of more homes. In the end, his legacy wasn't just violence, it was fear. And it haunted everyone he touched. The news spread like wildfire. A second suicide attempt, a secret confession to a journalist, and a list of potential victims. For many, it was the last straw. For Ellie Hart's family, it was another cruel reminder that even behind bars, Ethan Maddox still had power. The public reaction was swift and unforgiving. Online forums exploded with rage. Hashtags like #justice for Ellie and #lock him forever trended for days. Memorial murals popped up on hospital walls across the country, honoring Ellie's life and work. Nurses wore pins with her initials. Parents she had cared for gathered in candlelight vigils. And at the center of it all, Maddox's name. Again and again. But this time, something shifted. People weren't just talking about the murder. They were talking about the system that allowed it to happen. Why wasn't Maddox red flagged sooner? How did someone with clear signs of aggression and instability stay employed that long? And why hadn't Ellie's warnings been enough? The Oregon Board of Nursing opened an internal investigation into Providence Children's Hospital. HR procedures were audited. Complaint handling protocols were rewritten. Several managers were quietly reassigned. None of it brought Ellie back, but at least it acknowledged something had gone terribly wrong. Then came the op-eds. Major outlets published scathing columns questioning the defense's reliance on PTSD as an excuse. Headlines read, "Trauma is not a license to kill." What Maddox took wasn't just a life, it was trust. America's silent epidemic, when veterans become predators. Veterans groups pushed back hard. They argued that using PTSD as a legal shield stigmatized thousands of service members who lived with it daily, and never hurt anyone. What began as a murder trial had now become a nationwide referendum on mental health, military reintegration, and criminal accountability. And right in the middle of that firestorm sat Ethan Maddox. Cold, unmoved, still playing the game. His prison behavior had become increasingly erratic. He refused food for days, then demanded steak, claimed he was being poisoned, then begged for extra dessert. He paced for hours, talking to himself. Guards reported him rehearsing imaginary court speeches in his cell mirror. Every day, a different story. Every day, a new performance. But one thing was consistent. He refused to admit guilt on record. Clementine Marsh, the journalist, had gone public with the tapes. Her voice was calm as she recounted how he had whispered to her on the phone. "If the world thinks I'm a monster, then maybe it deserves monsters." She said she feared for her safety. She wasn't alone. Jamie Wells, Ellie's partner, had begun receiving anonymous letters, typed, unsigned, postmarked from various cities. All of them contained one line: "You're next." Police couldn't trace them, but the timing was no coincidence. The DA's office issued a formal statement reassuring the public that Maddox was under full lockdown, with no mail or external contact. But it didn't calm the fear. Some believed he had allies. Others said it was copycats, or sick opportunists. But one thing was clear. The nightmare wasn't over. And then, it got worse. The Oregon Supreme Court received a formal appeal request from Maddox's legal team. They argued the sentence was excessive, that the trial had allowed emotionally inflammatory evidence to prejudice the jury, that PTSD had not been fairly weighed. They wanted a retrial, or at minimum, a sentence reduction to 25 years with eligibility for parole. Ellie's family was blindsided. Jamie called a press conference outside the courthouse. Her voice cracked, but her words were steady. He stalked her. He killed her. He buried the evidence and smiled while doing it. If that's not life without parole, then what is? Thousands signed petitions demanding the appeal be denied. But legally, the court had to review it. The hearing date was set for the following spring. And Ethan Maddox knew it. In his cell, he smiled wider than he ever had before. He wasn't done yet. The courtroom was quiet. No protesters. No cameras. Just a panel of judges. A stack of legal documents. And a name that still carried the weight of a murder that rocked a city. Ethan Maddox. The appeal hearing wasn't about guilt or innocence. That part was settled. What Maddox wanted now was something different. A second chance. His defense team argued that life without parole was excessive. That PTSD hadn't been fairly considered. That the judge in the original trial allowed emotional evidence, photos, testimony, victim impact statements, to sway the jury beyond reason. They called it a sentencing error. The state pushed back hard. They didn't deny Maddox's military service. They didn't dispute his trauma. But they asked the same question everyone had been asking for over a year. Why plan it? Why buy the gloves? Why cut the power? Why bury the evidence? Why smile when the verdict was read? And that was the heart of it. This wasn't the story of a man who snapped. This was the story of a man who waited to snap, until it gave him what he wanted. The judges took the matter under review. Maddox was returned to his cell. Alone. Unshackled only in sleep. That night, something changed. Around 3:20 a.m. A guard on rotation passed by his cell and saw something strange. Maddox was sitting perfectly still, legs crossed, staring at the wall. On the wall was something new. Written in soap and blood. Smudged and deliberate. She wouldn't shut up. That was it. The next morning, he refused breakfast, refused his meds, refused his hour of yard time. He stopped talking entirely. 3 days of silence. And then, he broke. He called for the chaplain. When the chaplain arrived, Maddox said nothing for nearly 15 minutes. Just stared. Then he whispered, "I told the truth. No one cared." The chaplain asked him what truth. Maddox just smiled. Later that night, the prison received an urgent call from the Oregon State Police. A lead investigator from Eleanor Hart's case had uncovered a journal entry from Maddox's original laptop, something missed during early forensics. It was dated 3 weeks before the murder. It read, "If she testifies, I'm done. I need silence. Silence is justice." And with that, the final piece clicked into place. Maddox didn't kill Ellie out of rage. He killed her to stop her from reporting him again. Because she had found something new. Something about a patient Maddox mistreated. An incident that could have led to criminal charges. Ellie had documented it, was preparing to submit it to the Oregon Board of Nursing. And Maddox knew it. She was his reckoning. So he cut it out of his life the only way he knew how. Permanently. The judges ruled the appeal unfounded. Denied. Sentence upheld. No parole. No compromise. But justice didn't stop there. The Board of Nursing released a new policy, requiring any report of workplace aggression to be escalated to law enforcement if 2 or more complaints were filed within a 90-day period. It was dubbed the Ellie Clause. Hospitals across Oregon adopted it within weeks. And Jamie? She kept fighting. She started a foundation, Ellie's Light, focused on protecting healthcare workers from harassment and violence. The foundation's hotline handled 600 calls in its first month. Meanwhile, Ethan Maddox was transferred to a psychiatric unit inside the Oregon State Penitentiary. Isolated, monitored, forgotten by most. But in his own mind, he wasn't forgotten. In a final letter, never sent, but found inside his mattress, he wrote, "They'll study me, like a lesson, like a warning. I am the answer to a system that made me invisible." He signed it not as Ethan Maddox, but as E.M., the initials he used to write on his backpack in Iraq. He thought it meant power. But all it meant now was a scar on a city's memory. On the morning of April 15, 2024, exactly 5 years to the day since Eleanor Hart was murdered, Ethan Maddox was found dead in his cell. No signs of struggle, no guards involved, no medical error, just Maddox, face down on the floor, skin pale, lips blue, a bottle of pills clutched in one hand, a plastic bag in the other. The coroner's report listed the cause as asphyxiation and overdose. A carefully executed plan, a final act of control. He died the same way he lived, alone, angry, and convinced he was the victim. But this time, no one mourned, no one rallied, no one lit candles for Ethan Maddox. He had become exactly what he feared most, forgotten. The prison issued a brief statement. His body was claimed by no one. No next of kin came forward. He was cremated anonymously, his ashes stored in an unmarked canister. And just like that, his name disappeared from the headlines. But Eleanor Hart's didn't. That same day, more than 2,000 people gathered outside Providence Children's Hospital for a candlelight vigil. Nurses, doctors, parents, children, people who knew her and people who didn't, all drawn to the legacy she left behind. They read her words. The ones she scribbled on sticky notes and index cards. Words she taped to her desk and handed to interns. Words like, "Compassion doesn't cost a thing, but withholding it can bankrupt a soul." They played a video montage of her teaching CPR to 5th graders. Singing lullabies in the PICU. Making kids laugh even as they faced the worst pain imaginable. And they announced something new. A national program, funded by Ellie's Light Foundation. designed to provide every hospital in America with a real-time alert system for staff safety. A panic app, directly linked to security and law enforcement. They called it Code Ellie. And it saved its first life just 3 weeks later, when a nurse in Atlanta used it during a violent outburst from a patient's parent. Her name was Carrie. She never met Ellie Hart. But she'll never forget her. In the months that followed, Jamie Wells traveled the country. She spoke at conferences, at universities, at government hearings. Her voice grew stronger. Her pain, somehow, turned into a weapon of change. She carried a laminated badge clipped to her jacket at every speech. It had a photo of Ellie smiling. Not the official hospital photo, the real one. The one Jamie took on a camping trip, when Ellie had marshmallow on her chin and wind in her hair. Tell their stories, Jamie would say, or we'll keep repeating them. As for Clementine Marsh, the journalist Ethan confided in, she received the Polk Award for Excellence in Investigative Reporting. Her piece, The Man Who Mistook Silence for Justice, became a landmark profile in understanding post-service violence and the danger of glorifying unresolved trauma. But even in her moment of victory, Clementine ended her speech with 6 words. This isn't my story to own. Because it wasn't. It never was. It belonged to Ellie. To the kids she saved. To the nurses she trained. To the families who now sleep a little safer at night. In the end, Ethan Maddox didn't leave a legacy. He left a warning. But Ellie Hart? She left a light. And that light isn't going out anytime soon. If this story moved you, share it, talk about it, keep the memory of Eleanor Hart alive. Support your healthcare workers. Listen when they say they don't feel safe. And never underestimate the power of one voice standing up for what's right. Justice was done, but we owe Ellie more than justice. We owe her change. If you found meaning in this story, consider subscribing to our channel. You'll get more true stories that honor the victims, not the killers, and help us keep shining light into the darkest corners. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember, silence is never justice.